Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Hardieville tour. My name is Belinda Crowson. I'm the president of the Lethbridge Historical Society. Camera is Amanda Berg, and with us is Hope Weeb. We're going to be your tour guides for today as we guide around a virtual walking tour of Hardieville. Again, we're doing this month. This way you can be social. You can see the work of the Lethbridge Historical Society. As we go today, if you have any comments or questions, particularly questions, please be sure to ask. If I can answer them during the tour, I will. If not, later when I go back to my research books and everything, I will make sure I answer you then. We have a bit of wind again today, so I'm going to try to be nice and loud because I know that windy days, and while the one's getting the windy days, it's hard to hear anything. So a few years ago, I became very interested in learning more about Hardieville. I was frustrated with how little photographs I could find in the public archives and how little documented history there was. Hardieville doesn't have a community history book, doesn't have any stories written down about it, and so when people were asking questions about the mine and about the community, I couldn't answer them easily. So what I started to do was I started compiling whatever I could. I started talking to people and I started putting the story together. And I now document about 140 pages long of some family history, some community history, mine history, and various stories of Hardieville. But I'm continuing and wanting to add to it. And so if you have stories you want to share, please add them to the comments, or you can get in touch with me through the Lethbridge Historical Society and make sure your family history and your stories are added to the book. Now, the plan is to, once we have that book sort of compiled, it'll be put up on our Lethbridge Historical Society website where people can add to it or get information about Hardieville from there. So keep in mind that it is still a work in progress. I'm still continuing to add to the stories, and I'd love you to be part of adding to it. Now I'm starting today on the tour here in Georgetown Park. So in Hardieville, the park is called Georgetown, and you might wonder why. And it's actually very appropriate. It's called Georgetown. Are we having sound problems? Oh. Do you want to try the other one? Yeah.
Let's just keep going.
Okay. In September 1909, George Frederick Hopkins, also called Fred Hopkins quite often, a landowner hired a surveyor, J.F. Hamilton, to develop a survey for a new community he was wishing to develop. He called his new community Georgetown. And I'm having trouble flipping my book. There we go. The survey covered what is now the north half of the present-day community of Hardieville. The roads in the community actually were named. These were called William Street, Meldrum Street, Roy Avenue, and Main Street. Roy was Roy Hopkins, and he was the name of George Hopkins' son. William Meldrum, who would be very prominent in early Hardieville history, was also a surveyor, and he was the witness for this survey plan. So his son Roy and William Meldrum had the streets named after them. Shortly afterwards, after he surveyed the community, they petitioned the federal government, the post office, to have the Georgetown post office named Georgetown. They were turned down by the post office, who said there were already too many post offices called Georgetown across the country. So they had to come up with a new name. The second name submitted for the post office was Hardieville, and that was approved in November 1909. So the community started with the community being called Georgetown, and then the post office being called Hardieville. But over time, Hardieville became the name of both the community and the post office, and the Georgetown name has sort of been forgotten by many people. It is, as I said, remembered here in the name of the park, but it's no longer associated with the larger community. For people from Hardieville, the Georgetown name also became known as a suburb here, for sort of on the north end of the town, and continues on in that way. So who then was George Frederick Hopkins? Hopkins owned a considerable amount of land throughout this area, Diamond City, etc. He didn't live long enough, though, to really enjoy the growth of Georgetown. He was killed in a carriage accident in 1911, 2 years after the town was surveyed. From his grandson, what I've been told is he was riding in a carriage, he was thrown out, and unfortunately, as he fell, he hit his head on a rock and died there from the accident. His widow, Elizabeth Hopkins, married their hired hand, Thomas Newton. Roy Hopkins, their son, lived near Hardieville School till they moved their house into Lethbridge, further south on 13th Street North. Now, if the name Hopkins sounds familiar, then you really know your Lethbridge history, because between Hardieville and Lethbridge was a little community called Hopkinsville, also named after George Frederick Hopkins. It was basically where there was an air shaft for the mine and where there was a collection of houses. And if you're trying to imagine where Hopkinsville used to be, it was right there at the entrance to Legacy Ridge in that general area. And so George Hopkins had two places named after him, Georgetown and Hopkinsville. Unfortunately, except for, as I said, the park, most of the things named after him have since disappeared. So, Hardieville is the name we know this community by generally. Hardieville became the name of the post office. So we know where Georgetown's name came from. Where did the Hardieville name come from? It is named after William Duncan Livingston Hardy, better known by W.D.L. Hardy. Hardy was born in Bathgate, Scotland in 1862, and the family moved to Ohio when he was only 1 year old in 1863. But at 10, he was sent back to Scotland for schooling, and while in Scotland, he received a degree in civil and mining engineering from Glasgow University. He returned to the United States and worked in mines in Pennsylvania, Alabama, and Tennessee. He first came to Lethbridge in 1889 as the assistant to the mine superintendent William Stafford. He left Lethbridge in 1891. He went to work in Mexico, and then he went back to Pennsylvania, where he worked at the Scranton School of Mines, and while there, he completely rewrote the mining course curriculum at the school. In 1904, he returns to Lethbridge. This time, he becomes the superintendent of the mine. So remember, when he first arrived, he was assistant superintendent under Stafford. 1904, he's now the superintendent of the Galt mines. He will work for the Galt mines for 6 years, and then at the Diamond City mine for 2 years. Around that time, so now we're about 1912, he completely changes directions and he goes into politics. And he becomes elected as the mayor of Lethbridge and serves as our mayor from 1913 to 1928. Hardy is the only mayor of Lethbridge to serve under the commission form of government. And what that means is there were 3 commissioners. The mayor was actually also responsible for finance. And for 15 years, Hardy was the mayor under that system. And let's just say in some ways it was like a little dictatorship. He basically had control over council and over everything. After he leaves political office in 1928, he went on to serve as the assistant superintendent of the Dominion Elevator, which is the large elevator on Highway 3, and he worked until he passed away in 1940. So now we know the origin of the name Georgetown, the origin of the name Hardieville, but there would be no Hardieville, no Georgetown at all, if it wasn't for the mine. We're going to be heading across Georgetown Park onto the mine site. Now we want to be very clear that if you were, not us, if you pass that fence, you are technically trespassing. Going onto the mine site is trespassing, so please do not do it without permission. We did contact Melcor. We have permission to go on the site. The reason that they want us to be very careful about trespassing is 6, which is the mine we're going to be entering onto, had a lot of bumping and issues over the years. Holes, they're hurt. So we're very careful and watch where we're going, but they want to make sure that everybody knows it is not permitted to go onto that site, so please realize you're trespassing if you do. But we're going to walk across and go look at the ruins. It's just one comment about noise? Okay. Private. Can you get across without hurting yourself? Okay, technically you're not trespassing. their number. Looks like the city asked you to. On my almost everybody has it. Avoid the mud. When you find trails, you know other people have been trespassing. Or out here, they had mowed it. It was so much easier. Different ones. Number 6, Galt. As I said earlier, there likely wouldn't have been a Hardieville. In 1907, looked at a new mine. But floods on the river in 19, the construction of the high-level bridge convinced them that they had to go north instead. So they bought land from G.F. Hopkins, who we mentioned earlier, started to build here on the mine site. This was a large mine. You can just see from the ruins and how much air they take up that this is one of the largest mines collieries in Canada at the time. The mine, when they were planning it, was expected to cost $500 million, and that's to construct. Constructed to 1,634 tons. It was operate of Hardieville. I have here behind me a few places. Main of the place. The tipple had been built by the Wisconsin Bridge Iron Company of North Milwaukee.
No sound? Like no sound at all?
Sound is terrible. I'm trying to block
Yeah.
the wind for you. I got a board next time.
Well, we can. Want to try the other thing?
We could. Yeah, so
Okay.
what we'll have to do is we'll have to stop this. Then we'll
Just let we will
Yeah.
stop.
And just
film.
restart.
Yeah, and we'll
and
restart with a
restart
different mic.
with different mic.
Yeah.